First released in Power of the Elements, Tearlaments is a fusion-based archetype revolving around graveyard effects. At first, it rose to a shared top spot with Sprite, but following the release of both support in Darkwing Blast and the Yugioh cards and Magnificent Mavens, the deck surpassed its competitors. It acquired the elusive title of a Tier 0 deck, where the entire metagame revolves around countering exactly it, and it claimed over 80% of top cut spots on its following YCS, with a total of 7 YCS titles for the short 4 months of the deck's reign. The question then arises, how can Yugioh Tearlaments have become the first Tier 0 deck in roughly 5 to 6 years? Merely being good or even excellent at establishing its own win condition is not sufficient for a deck to achieve Tier 0 status, especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, where numerous counters to any strategy exist, and with Bestials, Dimension Shifter and other floodgates being everywhere to counter specifically and only Tearlaments, there was no shortage of counters available. Generally, for a deck to warp the entire metagame around itself, or for it to become truly Tier 0, a deck has to play on a different axis from its competitors in addition to possessing a high power level. Teledat defined the modern conception of the extra deck, while Zodiac introduced one-card combos into the game. These were gameplay functions that no prior deck realistically had access to. A Tier 0 deck not only plays better from the other decks, but also needs to play fundamentally different from them. It claims both quantitative and qualitative superiority. That is not to say that Tier 0 decks were unbeatable, even at that time, nor that every deck introducing something new into the game is automatically Tier 0 or even good. Nonetheless, Tier 0 decks tend to be revolutionary in design, marking a shift in how decks are designed to generate card advantage and accomplish their win condition. Bringing out boss monsters from the extra deck requires less resources than one from the main deck, and your combo requiring only one card to go off likewise allows for more and thus better plays with the same amount of cards. Even if these concepts have gotten stronger over time, the development is only quantitative, whereas Zodiac or Teledat were qualitatively different from the decks that came before. No other deck did what they did. For Tearlaments, their uniqueness can be best summarized in 2 words: Chain Havnis. Ways to interrupt your opponent during their turn have existed since long before Tearlaments. Effect Failure was released in 2011, while DD Crow came as early as 2007. What sets Havnis apart from its predecessors, and thus what makes Tearlaments into a Tier 0 deck, is that Havnis was an archetypal handtrap. Handtraps are cards that can activate from the hand as quick effects during either player's turn. Think for example of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, the most iconic handtrap in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a card that, by simply discarding it from the hand, negates several effects involving moving cards out of the deck. Handtraps are powerful because they need no prior setup in order to be activated. They activate from the hand, the immediate location any card you can play ends up in at the start of the duel. You don't need to use any resources to put them on the field or in the graveyard first. From the moment of being drawn, they reside where they can be activated. This quality, paired with handtraps being quick effects to activate, means they have the unique characteristic of being activatable during the so-called turn 0. This unique ability has made handtraps an integral part of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! As the most versatile and effective way of preventing your opponent from setting up. However, handtraps pose a slight design issue on their own. These cards don't contribute to fulfilling your deck's own win condition. Instead, they only prevent your opponent from establishing theirs. Yet in order to consistently win going second, it is fundamental to include handtraps in your deck, at least during game 1. A playable hand going second not only includes sufficient engine cards to be able to make your own plays, but also enough handtraps to deter your opponent from playing. Of course, this downside is not at all unique to hand traps. Non-engine has been an important part of Yu-Gi-Oh deck building ever since the inception of engines. Some decks, such as Zodiac and Vanquisol, even revolve around non-engine to win the games. The fact that hand traps do not contribute to your plays is not a reason to not play them, but it does make them weaker than if they did contribute. Since hand traps cannot be converted into engine cards, their purpose, once again, is only to stop your opponent. In other words, hand traps don't push you ahead, they only slow down your opponent. Essing a branded fusion or a welcome labyrinth does make it easier for your own cards to win, yet you still need to have those cards in order to win. The most blatant example of this is hand traps such as Artifact Lancia and Dimension Shifter, cards whose entire purpose it is to completely stop your opponent from playing, yet which provides nothing beyond that one capacity. That is not to say that hand traps have no potential to contribute to your engine. Many examples exist, such as DD Crow serving as an extra dark in the graveyard, possible chaos plays, or the Summon of Death. More so, Max C has the potential of drawing into any of your engine pieces, but besides this only serves as a potential access to engine, not as engine itself. While these benefits exist, they are purely accidental and only function in conjunction with the actual engine. Hand traps only stop your opponent's plays, but don't make plays. This is wherein archetypal hand traps differ. What I consider to be an archetypal hand trap is not just a hand trap that belongs to an archetype, such as Tri-Brigade, Mercurial, or the new Kelbeck, or any of the Bistios besides Magnum Hut. My reason for this is that these hand traps either don't facilitate any engine plays on their own, meaning that their effects are purely interruptive, or because they only function when you have made engine plays already, meaning you can't activate them turn 0. A card like Mercurial is better categorized as a hand interruption, not a hand trap. Going second, that Mercurial does nothing in your own hand until you arrive to your own turn. Similarly, a card like Kelbeck or Orange Light only interrupt the opponent, even if they belong to an archetype. They perform no different from Ash Blossom. These cards only interact with your opponent's cards, whereas Havnis instead interacts with your own deck. The effect of Havnis is to special summon itself from the hand to then mill 3 cards from deck. Tearlaments Castilla has the same effect, but performs it as a quick effect by banishing a tier card from hand or graveyard. Both are hand traps that allows the user to mill 3 cards during the opponent's turn on your own turn 0. Because all of the Tearlaments cards have trigger effects upon being sent to the graveyard, including effects to conduct a fusion summon, one Havnis can potentially lead to searches or fusion summons during your opponent's turn. These fusion summons can either access further engine, interrupt your opponent's plays, or at the very least, serve as additional bodies. The reason a successful Havnis is as potent as it is not because it's simply put powerful interruption on your field. Being able to summon a Kaleido Heart during the opponent's turn is, of course, nothing to scoff at. Against some decks, such as a weak Sprite hand, it might even be turn ending. Instead, the potency from Havnis lies in the fact that it is part of your engine. If you are playing Tearlaments, you are already playing Havnis to begin with. It will be played regardless of its hand trap functionality. As such, it is not a detriment to your deck's consistency, or actively contributing to establishing your own win condition. The more important ability is that cards like Kid Kalos, Kaleido Heart and Hulkalos are cards you want to summon during your own turn anyway. Hulkalos is a common end boss in Tearlaments. Kid Kalos is the main avenue for which all the deck's plays used to go, and Kaleido Heart is a powerful interruption as well as a powerful card to break your opponent's board with. Dragon of the Swamp at the same time is a card that insulates your own plays from most of the Tearlaments interactions, as many of them rely on targeting effects. If you go second with Tearlaments, most of the time you will want to establish a Kid Kalos, Dragon or Kaleido Heart in order to break their board. But because of Havnis, you now have the potential to summon these cards a turn early, meaning you can spend your resources differently during your own turn. By expediting your own plays, the total number of plays you can make nearly doubles. All of this is possible because Havnis' handtrap effect does not impact the cards in your opponent's control, but instead those in yours. By letting you access cards from your deck during your opponent's turn, you become able to play during their turn. That Havnis also has interruptive potential through the card it mills serves only as extra benefit. Its primary strength lies in its ability to let you play during your opponent's turn. Tearlaments aren't the only deck to have access to an archetypal hand trap, let alone the first. Predating Havnis is the Yugioh deck, containing a main deck of monsters that can all special summon themselves as quick effect during the opponent's turn, with additional effects upon summon. More decks in possession of archetypal hand traps have been released since. Labyrinth has access to Stovey and Chandelier to set welcome traps during your opponent's turn, allowing you to activate them during your first turn, one turn earlier than normally. When paired with Cooklock, it becomes possible to activate these during the opponent's turn even. The new areas likewise allows you to activate any normal trap during your turn 0 by setting it from your hand. Rescue Ace similarly has a group of warrior monsters that can summon Rescue Ace monsters from hand, graveyard or deck when the opponent activates a monster effect a la Havnis. Most noteworthy is Rescue Ace Impulse that is able to summon either Fire Attacker or Fire Engine from deck, giving the player either draws or another summon from deck based on the opponent's actions. When opened with a Preventer, Fire Engine can be used to summon Airlifter from deck, that is then able to summon the Preventer from hand, allowing you to Book of Moon your opponent during your turn 0.
He wants to have it again then. There comes Cooklock.
Cooklock is immediately being bounced back to the hand as well. And now you can activate Stovey, you can activate the Welcome Labyrinth from the graveyard, you can activate the Chandelier. This is so much value. And Gabriel Nett said the only question is, does he activate the Eradicator Epidemic Virus right now?
The Ariana can draw a card. We've got to wait just one more second.
This is so much. Like Chainlink 1, 2, 3, 4, all the things happening, all the good things for Gabriel Nett, and now also the Eradicator! And the crowd is going wild! Of course, going after spell cards! Lightning Storm is gone! And so
both of these decks show the unique power of archetypal hand traps better than Havnis is able to. The immense power of Tearlaments as a strategy means that whenever Havnis does successfully hit a Tear card, it almost always results in some form of interruption, even if not necessarily. For Rescue Ace and Labyrinth, however, a second card is required to be opened, alongside the archetypal hand trap, in order for them to actually interrupt the opponent. Stovey and Impulse on their own otherwise accomplish only preemptive plays on the first turn. Being able to set up early is their main utility, with interruptive potential being a powerful bonus. It is exactly this setting up during the opponent's turn that differentiates the archetypal hand traps from the other ones and what defines their utility. The effects of this ability are evident in the way Tear and Labyrinth are built. During Tier 0 format, half of Tear's hand traps were archetypal ones, whereas post-aggro Labyrinth also focuses on generating resources and activating traps as often as possible, during as many turns as possible. Despite being a trap deck, the furniture pieces allows Labyrinth to play a large monster count with minimum traps at a rapid fire pace that can even play into Nibiru. These cases do exemplify that archetypal hand traps are a design element Konami is currently exploring. Without access to the ability to play during turn 0, Tearlaments may not have been as dominant as it were, and Labyrinth would be assigned to more trap-heavy control variants and wouldn't be able to keep up with the current top decks. Whether more decks gain access to this ability is to be seen, but the ability to do so has proven itself to be a valuable asset. Every deck can interrupt during turn 0, but only archetypal hand traps let you play during it as well.